Just a moment.
They talked about what's on the sheet or what was up there. Either one. And starting with the sheet, but if you'd rather talk about the other ones first, that's probably cool. That's okay.
Generally, I don't like it. No, I do. That's specific. Sometimes evil. Don't tell Matthew. Get him to try. Religions. The original social science.
Okay.
To help things move along better, you know. Shaman. The old shaman. I guess the new ones too. We got one. Who wears a dress, he says. You know, they came up with the idea, which was just to make things go better.
All right.
Cult.
I see religion as being the center or essence of the universe. Spirituality and rules combined make religion. Culture and cult combined make religion. Religion is the center of all of that. Is the way I see it. Because religion has rules. We kind of are cultish in our culture. And so I see this as religion as being
I love it when you like how you speak. Sometimes books go, that's a stick in this. Well, I look at them, they all, in their own way have, you know, relationship. Okay, so, you know, depending on what it is, it's called culture, the spirit of the relationship and the community that creates it. Okay. I like that. Are you thinking of anything that you want to add, or should we? All right, now, okay. Okay, you just got here, we'll give you a start. Lily, did you have anything you wanted to add?
Well, I was just the religion thing, and I agree with that. We talk about that, but that's okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Jenny, all of you are very hard of hearing. Most of the time I don't hear and I'm afraid to ask questions. But I do want to have a question.
Okay.
It's spirituality and inborn attribute or attribute you learn.
Yeah, there's a question. What's your answer?
It's automatic.
You're bored with it?
Not necessarily, but you come up with. You come up with, it's a. It is sort of, you're born with to some extent.
But
We
you
all-
develop.
We all have a conscience, right? The conscience, which is tied up in there somehow. But then you start thinking about it, develop.
What are you thinking?
I'm thinking you develop it, you're born with it, but as you age and as people teach you things, your spirituality develops
And you think
and
about
matures as you are maturing.
Okay, so you're adding the thinking as opposed to the feeling spiritual.
yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying that's right or wrong, it's just.
Good scientists.
Yeah, definitely.
How so?
Yeah, so I guess I agree with, I agree that it develops over a period of time, you know, from your youth, what you're exposed to. And I'm not sure where I am now. And the whole picture, and that's why this class is important, because we're learning a broader spectrum of activities. Of course, the sermons are another avenue also. So, I guess as a scientist, I always look at nature as they try, and that's my job, is to understand nature.
What kind of a scientist are you?
I'm a cross between a chemist and physicist.
Okay,
My degree's out of chemistry,
okay,
but most of my work is done in physics. So,
so you're not a botanist,
no,
okay?
I,
Tell us how powerful physics is.
Because you said nature was how you got the spirit.
yeah, right. And I think about when I was a Boy Scout, and because you would camp out in the woods and you do hikes and stuff like this, you would see what's around you, and try to understand it. And I think we talked about this once before in this class. I was far enough north, I could see more borealis. And when I was raised, and I had no idea that as a kid. I went in the house the first time I saw it. Yeah. And, so I think I think the spiritual part is part of the connection to nature. I try to, and of course, because of my career, trying to understand how nature works. And so now I would say most of my reading, now that I'm working, is probably astrophysics and stuff like that, because what's these fantastic instruments that have been developed in the last 15 years and what they're seeing there. I mean, they're almost to the edge of the universe with the current Webb telescope. I mean,
Flip side, astrophysics to the edge of the universe is very opposite. I like nature because I see a leaf,
right.
and God is in the leaf, or the pattern of the river is the same as the pattern you see in bodies, is the same as the pattern you see, very much this place grounded.
That's how you see it. He sees it different.
Well, that's why I said there are both sides,
Yeah, but I agree with you. What you visually see, and then you try to understand what you see.
Yeah. Now, just being me, when I did this, I never included any of that. This is all people oriented. I was a history teacher. My degrees in philosophy and theology, very much people oriented. And yet my dissertation was actually on that stuff.
Yeah.
So, yes, what are you thinking?
I think Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And I
You all
myself,
know that one?
psychologist that has the hierarchy of needs and starts out as basic needs. And I was thinking about how the basic needs of an infant child is food and shelter, nurturing parents. But then I thought, I think, like he was saying, I think it's still in us to desire the spiritual piece. I think if I were to talk to Maslow, that's him, wouldn't you include that part in the basic need? Because I think children, they need a lot of nurturing, help, understanding of the world. And like you were saying, in a physical world, and so and that's it really delves into spiritual and physical and all those pieces. So I think it's basically.
As I remember Maslow, which was a long time ago,
Yeah.
he put spirituality basically on the tip of
Yeah.
the triangle, right? So he says, yeah, it's great. Once you've gotten everything done, basically, then you can reach.
That's when you're older. Yeah. But I'm like, oh, it's it starts down here. Okay, I think it comes from God.
Okay.
It starts desire to have God, something beyond.
Okay.
Well, every time I look at Master's triangle, it's not that he's saying spirit is only at the top. It's that to me, the whole triangle is spirit. But all these needs have to be met so that you can begin to actualize and access. So it's not that spirit is missing from that bottom one. To me, spirit, Spirit's holding it up.
is the whole triangle, or then you can't access any of that spirit if this need person is met, and this need, as these needs get met, you're able to access that spirit more.
So
Until-
it's different for the baby, and
Yes, and more. If these needs aren't met, then the baby will never access that spirituality.
Well, I also think, as your election, so I mean, I think if you think about, the babies who are born, they arrive with their own temperament and personality, and I sort of include that in their spirit, because that's.
Kathy was saying she's having hard.
Oh, I'm sorry. I think when babies are born, they arrive with their own temperament and spirit. I mean, I think about my first child, she came out, she was silent, she just blinked her eyes and looked around. And she's a very pensive person to this day. And the second child was screaming before he was ever fully out. And, you know, and he was about good. And then has to travel the world and negotiate with people all the time. And so and my daughter ended up being a religion major at Princeton, and then later, she actually became a doctor. I said her before or after church. Laugh. But, you know, I think people arrive with temperament and a spirit that sort of leads them to perceive the world in different ways. You know, and it's layers of experience. It's exactly what you say about having to have all these needs met before you can develop fully this personality or this spirit, this life force. And you have to be fed, and you have to have shelter, and you have to have at least one constant nurturer that believes in you. And, you know, there are just all these other things that allow you to be a whole person and to experience the world fully. Otherwise, it's stuck at some place where all you can think about is finding a meal or avoiding the pain.
Yeah. So what about going around, what about cults? How do they fit into spirituality? And by the way, what is a cult?
A particular kind of sect. I mean, the word cult is loaded because of all the nuts out there.
Jim Jones.
Yeah.
So,
Denomination.
it's kind of the tribalism in the whole thing. We to conglomerate like kinds.
Okay,
That's-
how's a cult different than a denomination?
It's not.
All right, anybody want to disagree?
I think the cult requires total devotion to it, and there's not room for other ideas or exploration. And there's a very strong leader who sets the direction for the group, and you have to adhere to these rules. So if you like to not have to think about making decisions or being responsible, a cult can be very it can be also like a religion in some ways. It can make you feel safe to know if I do this, this will happen. And until your leader says you're too late. And
Everybody, yeah, drink the Kool-Aid, okay.
Is that an exception though?
Yeah.
The Kool-Aid thing,
I would say it's an extreme.
yeah.
Well, that's kind of the way I see, you know, that all fits into the Jim Jones thing, certainly, and a lot of other. You know, but I think it can be just as neutral as you're talking about. I think it runs the gamut.
I think some religions are cultish, let me put it that.
How so?
In that you believe what I tell you or get out, because I don't want to pay. And I've been thrown out of church.
Ah,
I was in one service and I was told, get out because I was thinking it was funny what he was saying.
Thanks to that.
which was preaching about my mother and three of her friends who played bridge on Thursday, and they weren't supposed to do that.
That was really-
Why don't you do it on Sunday morning?
Well, then his mother told him to get out. It was really kind of hysterical, but
Anyway,
it was quite funny, I thought.
okay. So you have one man making the rules, and if you didn't like the rules, you were out,
That's right.
okay?
Or it could be a group, I mean, I'm thinking of this guy. Years and years ago, he was like the darling, he was black, right? He was the darling of the yellow. And, one day, after a lot of conversation, he stood before this mega church congregation and said, you know, I don't believe in hell. I don't believe there's anything, such thing as hell. And anyway, didn't even know, like, what do you mean you don't believe in hell?
Yeah.
And I mean, he was serious, you know, it's like, I don't believe God created hell. I don't believe there is hell. And, it's like, they cut him off. So now, you know, I'm trying to think of the, great for me to talk, you know, like, that end of the evangelical spectrum, he was their dog. But when he said, I don't believe in hell, it's like, so, I mean, like, you know, but we're saying that it's a cult. Well, they don't consider themselves a cult, but it's like, you don't know his art, you're right.
Yeah. So I feel like that.
That was not the strong leader, that was the weak leader, the strong congregation. Actually, I have here before my,
Also,
when there was a marriage performed,
oh, yeah,
it was passed up.
yeah.
I'm just saying, they're-
I don't think it was mass.
Oh,
We have,
several exits.
You're right.
yeah,
And they went to the San Diego.
yeah.
I mean, the church that I went to, United Church of Christ Church, which has this big liberal reputation, right? When they voted to become open and affirming, the church split.
Yeah.
It's like, what? You split it, you know, I mean, like, you're in the United Church of Christ, you know? They've been open, you know, they've been
United.
ordained, openly gay and lesbian people forever, and like, you didn't know this? And now they're asking you to say, well, yeah, I mean, we agree with the national, or we don't, in the policy, they're all different, say, you know, any church can say, the national line, no, we don't, but they don't leave. But I mean, this congregation got split down, with half the church left in Rio Rancho.
And, you know, it was a very interesting policy, and it was such a needed one, but it required so many people to think, and it depended on when the surges to a congregation. Ours was like 25 years ago. We did a fairly slow process. A member on staff talked about what it's like to grow up gay in small town Texas and not fitting in and discrimination at that time. You know, young gay man had been murdered on Montana or Wyoming, and all of a sudden everybody was so wrong. The congregation was ready to accept it, but on any change, it requires an educational piece because people aren't always ready to accept without knowing somebody or thinking about it, and it's hard to ask them suddenly on the spot.
No, they went through the whole O&A process.
Yeah.
Okay, they went through the whole O&A process, and people in that church like, no, we don't believe this is wrong.
What's the O&A from?
Open and affirm, okay? That you go in for a series of studies and discussions and discernment, the church does it for as long as the church needs to before they decide, okay, we talked enough, we're ready to make a decision. So it's like, they didn't like somebody come in and I mean, that's the thing. They had so many gays and lesbians as members in the congregation who were out. So that's why like people like stunned. So I mean, now, a bigger piece of that is not considered itself a cult. But half of those people said, if this is what you believe, we're out. We didn't kick them. out, they left.
Yeah.
They wanted everybody to do the same thing. They didn't want a congregation where you could agree that the O and A is okay or you could not agree. It's like, they left.
Hmm.
Then they had the same kind of split over inclusive language within them.
Oh, it is so interesting. To break the congregation up. And yesterday at the Deacon and Elder Retreat, the one topic that raised the most vocal thing was whether or not to take up the carpet in the sanctuary.
Yeah.
I mean, there are all of these other
It's
issues
split
going on.
going
You know, in the sanctuary, because
So that again, a very good reason for doing it.
but the fact that that was where the energy was.
Yeah,
And in the.
I agree 100%. This is not why I'm here.
In this type of organizational structure, coming out of an organizational group of ministers, happen not to be Presbyterian in case it matters. I mean, we have Presbyterians and Episcopalians and Baptists and Methodists and Congregationalists and everybody in there. Cult was used as a very specific term to mean a group of people who are following one person. Could be whoever. It could have been Jesus. It could have been Siddhartha Gautama, other name for Buddha. It could have been Abraham. It could have been, Muslims. Muhammad, thank you, Frankfurt. You know, pick your, it could be anybody. I mean, it could be Matthew, but it is one person who sets up a group of followers such that when that person dies, the next generation does it, whatever that person had said we do. The third generation does it. And by the time you get at least a century beyond, they are still doing it. That's when you go to a religion. It starts out as a cult. It starts out as we all follow. Jesus has these 12 dudes who insist on walking around with him. Also potentially a whole lot of women who just don't get written into the book. But Jesus died. I mean, when Jesus was out there, he was a cult figure. There's this one dude, and people are following him. Or walking into the desert without anything to eat. It's really stupid. You know, but by the 2nd century, the people who had heard about him and who had grown up hearing about him actually went through a huge problem and started killing each other. You think splitting congregations is bad. Over what did he say? How are we going to do this? What should be in the book? Are we going to have a book? What do you mean a book?
Was he really human?
Was he human? Was he God? Yeah. What do you mean to be human and God? Does that make any sense at all? You know, especially coming out of Judaism, where the whole point is that God isn't human and there's only one God. I mean, the first statement in Judaism is, "Hear, O Israel, the Lord thy God, the Lord is one."
Yeah. Yeah.
And all of a sudden, these other wackos are saying there are three. You know, three isn't one. And they start killing each other with that.
Yeah, you know what it was.
By the way, we covered this during the summer.
Good.
Um,
Because
this guy, Emery, is doing this great course series, and he's talking just like exactly what you said. This, so some of these people in the room have heard this
well,
from
I
another person.
I
Yeah.
am
Yeah.
because you're going from a cult to a religion.
Yeah.
Now, I also got culture on that line. What does it mean?
Oh, it's Kathy. There's a big difference. I went to Rome, and that's a huge thing. The difference between a culture that was not based on Judeo-Christian values and ours, you know, there's quite a difference here. It's surprising.
How so?
Well, there's also a lot of Christians there. Right?
Okay,
That's actually a huge thing going on. I think
okay,
we-
but what is the culture?
What is the culture? It's a, well, what Confucius thing is what the Chinese thing is based on.
Okay,
And that has to do with, relationships and a lot of, correct me if I'm wrong, okay, and I could well be. A lot of, who's above who in all relationships, right? And it defines it
How do you
actually,
get-
sorry, it's a bit,
oh, I know that.
it's defined right there. I mean, it's laid out, parent, child, you know, even friend, you know, there's one who is alpha and one who is not, right? And of course your boss and all kinds of.
Eldest son's over mother. Yeah,
Right. And, you know, the interaction, there was also a lot about how government is supposed to treat the,
did you notice rules are? Kathy, putting you on the spot, how do you think culture fits in?
Well, I think that mine is through the experience. I have lived a long life and have gotten into a lot of very dire situations. And I always seem to come out on top.
Okay,
And at some point, I realized that it cannot be down luck. There must be somebody, some power, somewhere that is arranging the things. So that's how I began to get in touch with spirituality.
so I'm hearing you feel that it is some sort of caring little g God that cares about you.
Yeah.
Okay, that could be the same or could be different than the religion you belong to. And might or might not fit into, now I'm hearing the culture had something to do with the dire circumstances. You know, this isn't coming into this room, say Sunday morning. Is that fair?
Yeah.
All right. Billy, what do you think?
I was just curious, that's interesting that she's doing the culture stuff instead of, you know, their rules is different than maybe spirituality.
Okay,
You go by the rules of the culture, like, you know. Maybe
what is culture? How does religion, spirit, golf relate to culture?
well, it's like the rules of the society, you know, oh, you're supposed to eat certain meals on certain days, that's culture, that's not spirit. Or you lights out at 10 o'clock at night, that's a culture thing. It has nothing to do with spiritual or religion. Or, you know, everybody reports at the town hall on Saturday afternoon, that's the culture thing. And that takes priority of everything else, it's our way. You know, and we have our rules of this community. And I think that's what culture does. It has its separate policy and different rules. And if you live in that community, you follow the culture stuff.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
That's what I think.
And how does that tie in with spirituality?
Well, I think it's because I think it's a priority of culture people rather than spirit.
Okay,
You know, it's our way. Don't talk about the man upstairs. Don't talk about Sunday sermons and that stuff. Because this culture, this is how we do it. And spirituality or religion is a separate thing. If you don't.
and if the spirit wants to talk to you at 11:30 at night and lights out at 10 o'clock.
Yeah.
Dreams are important.
They could be very, that could be good, that does, absolutely. So what were you going to say?
Well, I was just gonna give the definition of culture, the expression of religion and ethnicity in your society. And that you, it sort of dictates how you might do something. Whether you have communion or not, or whether you have Seder on Friday night, or whether you go to a particular type of school, whether it's religious school or secular school. And, you know, our country started as somewhat of a religious society. There were very strict rules about how you had to live.
Very
And people came to America to stay religious.
First thing you written into the Constitution.
Right.
And so I think it's status was with, and it's become more complex because now we have different types of people and different races and different religions. And so we have to work harder to make this society be harmonious because we don't know all the rules of everybody's culture.
It is hard and so diverse. I mean, it causes.
Well, it requires a lot of being present and understanding the other person. They have a different perspective. It's just as valid as yours. And that you.
Oh, but mine's the right one.
So listen, I don't know talk. So it requires more awareness and sensitivity. And if you haven't had experience in meeting different people, you don't know how offensive your speech can be to some people. And I'm suddenly, and my brothers stayed in South for a long time. And Robert and I moved around more and had people more besides the community. And the last time I was there, my brother started talking about something about it. My daughter was there, and she called the son and she says, "You can't let mother go spend time with Uncle Henry without a chaperone."
We did start out as a religious country.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And yet, at this point, and that's what I was saying last week, religion may have gone downhill a little bit because now atheism is a perfectly acceptable, you know, and we accept everything these days. That's sort of the rule now.
You may notice what's around the table.
Right, like, it's a round, not quite, but, so anyway, that's, you know, we do accept all these things that were not originally good ideas necessarily.
What are you thinking?
Oh, this, you know, thinking that this culture really manifestation of how it's a religion.
We'll get to its ears. All right, I'll let you know, the ears on the Buddha are a symbol of wisdom and enlightenment. They have nothing to do with the fact that he had, you know, some sort of birth defect. This is a symbol of his enlightenment, and, you know, just like Jesus is often pictured with a circle around his head. I mean, no, that isn't how we walk down the street. But it is a sign of what the Buddha is about. And his posture, the lotus posture, yeah, also is another symbol of how one empties oneself. You're totally self-contained. You are not in touch with any other thing, and yet that is what frees your mind to be one with everything. Because you can't focus on just I'm touching the table, because I'm not. I'm over here worrying about whether or not I can kick anybody. No, I can't. Isn't that wonderful? I move the chairs. But if you're totally self-contained, you are more free to actually be out, present in all of everything, because you are part of everything, and everything is part of you. Did you get a chance to say?
No.
Okay. Did you want
No, I
to
was just gonna say that culture finds out how the generation moved code are now living out those precepts. And so, so people complaining about kids having baseball games on Sunday. Well, it's been what, 100 years since everybody was so-called in a church on Sunday, so there was nothing else going on. There were new laws on Sundays, you couldn't.
There were enough time when I was growing up. I'm not.
I know what I'm saying. I'm not a hundred either. So, I mean, the culture reflects that old precepts. I was watching a documentary, a series on the different presidential elections, and lastly, ended with Bush versus Kennedy, and how all of these Protestant ministers were in their pulpits preaching how a Catholic could not be president of the United States. We are a Protestant country.
Well, he was going to take orders from the Pope.
Yeah, right.
I mean, like, I'm laughing, but I remember how, when Al Smith, I read in history about Al Smith wanting to be run for president, and how, because he was Catholic. Yeah, so it's like, Jesus, man. What religion accept?
No, there's a building in Albany called Al Smith's building. The government building.
Yeah, but Trump also made this point of crossing the street to go to the church to pick up a Bible, so everybody saw him, it was gradual at once. But this was an important figure, if you will. He did not dash out to the nearest ashram and decide that he was going to start meditating. That just wasn't what he did. What are you thinking?
Oh, well, I'm thinking, number one, each different religion has a different culture.
Okay.
Culture is based on so many things, but a big one is the rules set around what you do. And every religion has its own culture, and that's Presbyterians, Catholics, Baptists, all have different cultures. So
What about America?
America has a culture that is diverse.
Okay.
Let me put it that way. And it would be nice if everybody in America would keep that diverse culture in their own heart, in my opinion. That's what we were built on. And a lot of people just can't let some of it into their heart. They have to close off.
So what does that have to do with spirituality if every religion has its own culture?
Well, spirituality isn't religion. We've already discussed that. We've gotten through that.
Well,
Spirituality,
theoretically, there's some
my
connection. Some piece of paper.
spirituality to me is my connection with God through other people, through nature.
So those other people are the culture,
The other people are the culture.
okay?
And in our country, our culture is very diverse. I like to think I'm that diverse, but every now and again, I find myself closing something off and I say, Kathy, we can't do this.
Well, one of the
God
problems,
created us all. God created people. God created everything. And God loved it. So you are required, by my personal belief, to love everything also. I don't have to love the actions of people, but I do have to love them.
So action versus whatever you call them is part of what goes into culture,
Action versus life.
okay?
And not just life like a human being or even a blade of grass. Life, like the water flows, the mountain moves, the sky moves, that's all life too.
Okay,
And my spirituality is with all of this coming to me, and I can feel love when I have it.
all right.
If I don't have it all, I'm not feeling love. And spirituality is love.
Okay, what are you thinking?
well, I'm going to slightly disagree about the diversity.
Go for it.
And the reason is because people are so mobile. Go back 100 years ago, I think I agree with you on diversity. Now it's all mixed. So I go back to my home where I was raised, and people who have not left are still sticking with things back there. But a lot of those people have left. I mean, that particular area where I was raised in New York State is essentially a Rust Belt. Probably the population's been decreased probably by 60 or 70%. Not like Brooklyn, which has its own culture in New York State. So, but so I think, Kathy, I agree with you if I look at the past. That we have it. But today, I don't know how many people in this room were born in New Mexico.
But that's why it's diverse.
As we
All come from it.
Yeah,
We all have, we're raised different.
but if you were here 100 years ago, people would say it's the verse also because it's more of a Spanish Native American culture.
I think the definition of diversity may
Yeah,
change.
yeah.
Because it used to be the Native Americans, the Anglos, and the Hispanics.
Right.
Those three, they're the discussion. It is not like that.
No,
Far.
right.
What do you think?
It's a good thing.
I have no further thoughts on the discussion.
Go
Go
for
for
it.
it.
It's not a head discussion, it's heart thing. I'm Hispanic, I grew up Catholic, and my parents were generations of Catholic from northern New Mexico. And so there's a real ingrained Hispanic cultural, religious piece, real thick. In fact, a little bit of a negative in the culture and religion too. I think males have more value than females.
Okay.
So my mother, I wouldn't have a conclusion, but like my mother, for instance, would say, go iron your brother's clothes because he has to go to work. Because you have no value to it, just being a
And he's never ironing your clothes because you have to.
oh, he would iron his own clothes, little things like that. And so then that's how I grew up with that awareness, knowledge, beauty. That, yeah, I hate my brothers. Even when they're not, can't see. But anyway, so that's kind of been ingrained and through the years, I went to different churches and left the Catholic Church, and I go back, it's just back and forth. But now as I've aged, I'm like, yeah, why don't you do what you want for once in your life? Because I've always done what I was supposed to do, took care of the kids, took care of the husband, passed away, took care, everything was taken care of. And so at that point, when I finally said,
And then Rob and I were attending another class, seminary prayer group. We talked about, you know, Presbyterian, was going to the church, we went to this. What would that be like? How would it be like just to go to somewhere where you might want to see? Because I had done it before, but I never quit. So I started coming here and I thought, whoa. Oh man, I hit jackpots. People talk and they think and they let you talk, like what's doing that, and all this good stuff. And the services, the early services, we have kind of like a mass, that's why I leave it, but I find, but it's okay. Oh, look at this, they are inclusive. Wow. But the purpose of this whole story is to tell you that yesterday I had to check in for my appointment with Presbyterian. And I saw that my affiliation, my religious affiliation said Catholic there, and I said, So I changed it. And I thought, I was gonna burn up.
Did you go to confession and say what you've done?
Some point, but I still was faithful because that's how I was raised. But anyway, thought, oh, the new era is continuing. Yeah, I am free. Don't choose. Because, you know, within the Catholic Church, Protestants, the talking part of people, you know. But one more little quick story. Once when my brother and I got stuck in some mud, we were in elementary school. We were stuck in mud because we tried to take a shortcut to get home. And these Protestant little elementary school kids, they got boards and got them and pushed them over till they pulled us out of the mud. And then we walked back out of the mud together with these kids. Oh man. Yeah. So it's just the influence. It's what I was thinking, religion and culture can become a cult. And it can be a very negative thing. And I think it's important to stick to spirituality, spiritual development. Sometimes it takes life experiences to teach.
Good. So what do you think?
I've been on the same road she's been apart. We only met a couple years. In my family, there was a split because my dad was from one denomination and he married my mother. So the different denomination, both of them said, no, you're going to hell if you do that.
Yeah.
I got tired of all of it. When I came here and just some of this stuff, I thought, hallelujah.
Presbyterians don't usually say hallelujah, except in Psalm on the fourth verse.
I was thinking it. I'm saying,
You're allowed to say.
I've enjoyed this place. I don't have to believe everything that everybody says perfectly. Yeah. But I haven't found too much that I disagree with them. I'd have to think.
One of the key precepts of Presbyterianism is that we are reformed, but always reforming.
Yes.
You know, it's not like that. One could argue that we also have a book of order and a book of confessions. And there they are, the rules. Oh yeah, an entire book of rules. And a book of confessions, an entire book of how people since the beginning of the Christian group have been writing down what they believe. What they believe. Not necessarily what you have to believe. Except that sometimes when they were killing each other over it.
And every couple of years, those books change.
They do. And always were.
I have a book. At home. Kept. And it's from the denomination that I was in. And I read it, you know, and said, well, people of all denominations or whatever the word they use, be saved. And he went through there and all this kind of stuff, and you get to the very bottom, the last line said, if your church doesn't have this name, you ain't got a chance. Period.
I am on a
Couldn't think of it.
I am on a Facebook page of Presbyterians talking about being Presbyterian. And somebody posted a question about, can you baptize someone who isn't sure whether or not they were baptized as a child? And this was a real question. You know, and it engendered all sorts of discussion. And one of me thought, yo, is this about our rules? Or is this about what God is doing in the relationship? And me personally, Jen Relman, I can't see God saying, excuse me, you've already had the water thing, can't do that again. I'm picking on her. But for people for whom the rules are important, they were going to the book of order, they were citing chapter first, this one says this one says that. It was very important. And that is where some of those rules come in, or in Catholicism. You know, I grew up with you can't eat meat on Fridays. And I got so sick and tired of the school cafeteria always having steaks on Friday.
I love fries. Stay those weekend, because you couldn't have your rice, you go with pizza.
Well, Anna will tell you the seminary she went to. And students of PTS,
No, I didn't know.
no, you went to Union,
Yeah.
but there was, 150 years ago, there was a big conflict between the two seminaries. Big time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Over exactly stuff like the rules. The other thing I was thinking about when.
We're talking 50 miles apart.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The other thing I was thinking about when I wrote down culture is early October, sometimes mid-October, you walk into Lowe's, which theoretically is building supply, and there are 5 and 6 foot tall Santa Clauses.
Yeah. That was
They did
true.
not have picture scenes, which I found interesting, but they did have Santa Clauses and other Christian examples.
Also, it was like September.
Well, I could be. How has the religion seeped into the culture, or how has the culture diluted the religion? Which way do you see it going? Now, we obviously did not today end up with time to do these guys because we ended up starting early. I totally agree with why the service had to do that. I ask you to put it back on the table, and depending on what we'll get to them next week. All right?
The Methodists are going through a big flip right now.
Are they? About what?
LGBTQ or
Oh.
whatever you say that.
That has split a lot of churches. Over the last 20 years.
Yeah.
Don't do it without.
That's the first one.
Well,
First,
Yes. That's God's.
why are you left?
Kathy first.
Oh, thanks. Worrying about the